The Orange Zone, sponsored by Billy Whitaker Cars and Trucks and Apex Entertainment.
Hi, everybody. Welcome into an episode of the Orange Zone podcast, Overtime. This is an exciting episode for us. Kyle McCord declaring for the NFL draft. So in a sense, we're saying goodbye. He spent one season with the Syracuse Orange, during which time it was a 10-win season. He broke the single-season passing yards record for the ACC and a host of other things that Syracuse fans will remember him by. I'm Samantha Croston. That's Ashley Wenskoski. How are you doing?
McCord goes pro, yeah. I know it's not the news that Syracuse fans were hoping for. Surely, when you have a season like this, you want to replicate it in whatever sense possible. But I think it feels right. It feels like the right time for him. It almost feels like the right time for the program in a sense. Not that it ever would have been the right time to say, bless you, to say goodbye to a guy like Kyle McCord. But everything about it feels like a nice, crisp ending.
There's a bow on it, right?
A bow.
And
at the Holiday Bowl.
No, the Holiday Bowl was the last present under the Christmas tree, man.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot else that you could have expected or wanted. Maybe just to start with the emotional side of things, and then we'll kind of get into why we think that he could have made this decision and did make this decision. He came out with his statement today. Really nice, kind words there, talking about Fran Brown, thanking all of the fans, which I really appreciated, saying that the Dome and playing in it is going to be one of his favorite memories. This is a guy who really cared about the Syracuse community and still does.
Yes, thanking only Fran Brown and the Syracuse coaching staff, and his note out, I should add, said that he'll forever bleed orange. I can just tell you, if he catches on or gets drafted or catches on with an NFL team, something that's going to hit really hard for Syracuse fans is that, you know what I'm talking about, the NFL promo where they lift their heads up and say their school. And when Kyle McCord says Syracuse, that's going to do something for people.
That's going to feed families.
That's going to feed families, nations.
Nations, legit.
Yeah.
So of course there was that. Obviously, he also talked to Pete Thamel from ESPN. So that article came out, which just had some interesting things about why Kyle McCord made this decision, right? To recap, many of you already knew that Kyle McCord and the university together had combined this effort to try and apply for a waiver so that he could have a fifth year of eligibility. Initially, it got rejected. So then they appealed. And the truth of the matter is, we found out today from a spokesperson with the team that they still don't know whether that waiver went through or not. And I do think that's at least important to take a beat on, because it shows that Kyle McCord thought this was the best path forward, irregardless of that decision.
Regardless.
Regardless.
Yes.
Is regardless a word? Did I just make that up?
No, I don't know.
We'll talk offline.
Moving on. Yes, allegedly the first waiver that was rejected was in the fall while the season was still going on.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
And then he has not found out the result of the appeal. But either way, he said, respectfully, I'm out. I don't really care. I'm going to the NFL. And I can't say that he's wrong for that decision.
I can't even necessarily say that I'm surprised. Listen, in a way, I thought once it got rejected the first time and then they were hunting for it again, I was like, why are you going to go through the process of trying to get it granted twice if you don't at least think about or are considering coming back? I do really think he thought long and hard about this. But again, you look at some of the factors and things that could have contributed to this decision, and I think it starts to seem kind of easy, or it's easy to see why he would have left. Let's start with just the other weapons around him, who we know are also going pro, right?
Yeah.
Gadsden, Meeks, LaQuinn Allen. It would have been tough to have or replicate the same kind of season he had this year.
Yeah. Fran Brown is the top recruiter in the country, and in a sense, he was recruiting Kyle McCord to come back. But he said on ACC Network last week or earlier this week that, and we knew this, that he was never going to guide Kyle McCord to make a decision regarding the NFL or a fifth year in college that he felt was not the right one for him. And so in a situation where you're losing two of your three top receivers, you're running your top running back, your starting center, your top tight end in Arondé Gadsden, you just look at the scope of the picture. And it would have been harder, in my opinion, for McCord to replicate what he did this season next year. And there's something to be said for going out when you're at the top of the mountain. We have no way of knowing if this was the top of the mountain. We are now never going to know if McCord, if he would have come back next year, what he would have been able to do with the difficulty of schedule that they're presented with, playing with many teams that were in the college football playoff this year, at Tennessee, Notre Dame, SMU, Clemson, the whole 9 yards. We don't know what Kyle McCord would have been able to do. We're never going to know. But the point is, I think there's something to be said for going out, and I said this in our episode when we were talking about this decision, when you're at the peak, and it kind of felt like he was at the peak this year. I mean, sets the ACC record in passing yards, sets all kinds of Syracuse records. I mean, you can go on and on, touchdowns, completions, touchdown passes, the whole 9 yards. It just felt like it was time.
I understand what you mean because I do think it's important. Obviously, our viewers know that we feel this way. But yes, to your point, who really is to say what could have happened next year if Fran Brown would have kept recruiting, brought in more weapons? Kyle McCord's still here. Fran Brown has one season under his belt. We'll never know. But we also see the facts and we report on sports. And yeah, it is sort of tough to try and make the argument that they would have had. I mean, are they going to have 10 wins next season or better? That's pretty much what you'd be betting on. You know, he already broke the ACC single season passing yards record. So is he going to break his own record again?
Right.
If he doesn't, does that mean that his season wasn't as good? It's a really, really high standard to have to, again, break. So I guess the only thing that I would say is you're right. We'll never know whether or not it would have been the peak. But as far as the things he's done previously, it is the peak.
Right. And in terms of just it's the peak in terms of, I guess, what the team could accomplish when you look at it from a schedule perspective and a weapons perspective. But also, if you look at it just from his individual draft stock perspective, I guess to me, and I'm not an NFL draft analyst, so just please, but what else would he have done to, I guess, improve? I think we know what Kyle McCord is at this point. Sure, with next year's draft class, maybe he could have been projected a little higher than he is right now, all that. But I guess anything besides, nothing sticks out to me in terms of what he could prove next year on a college football field, other than maybe increasing that mobility a little more. But we saw him try to do that this year with Little League Kyle, tried to use his legs more than he ever did at Ohio State. So maybe he would have been able to do, I guess, that piece of it, become more of a dual threat mobile guy. But honestly, I just don't think that's ever going to be Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord is a traditional pocket passer, and that is what he's going to be.
He's a star, but he ain't a track star.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
No.
Like there's only so much he's really going to be able to do.
Little League Kyle has little runs in him, but he ain't like Josh Allen out here on the running perspective.
That's my point. And also, just to say it once, because I feel like we don't talk about this enough. I understand there's a money component to where you get picked in the NFL draft. Fine. But really, I think that Kyle McCord is all in all in it because he really wants to play and he wants to make an impact and he thinks he's good enough to be in the NFL and be a quarterback who plays and who starts. And that's what every kid who goes to the draft wants, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to say it, we've all heard the story about Tom Brady. We know where Josh Allen was in the whole draft lineup. It's not I don't know that you need to be so high or your draft stock needs to be so high to make an impact. There are plenty of stories that you see all throughout the NFL and all throughout the league where the player wasn't even picked that high and they ended up being awesome. So I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm just saying as long as he's out there and he gets a shot, then it's really ultimately up to him to see what he decides to do with it.
I think he's obviously going to get a shot. Out of the teams in the NFL, somebody is going to want to take a flyer on McCord. Now, right now, there's a lot of different draft boards, but CBS Sports will just tell you the CBS Sports projection has him as 93 overall, which is, this isn't updated because it still has Carson Beck on here, but it's 5 to 10 in terms of the ranking of the quarterbacks coming out of this year's class. Obviously, you have a Cam Ward, you have a Shedeur Sanders. You have a couple guys ahead of him that almost surprised me in a sense in terms of Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers. But
even
they
Drew
have
Aller?
him in that, right, but Aller hasn't declared for the draft yet, so we'll see what happens there. But Carson Beck's still on here, and as we know, he's now transferring to Miami. So they have him really right now, late third round, could even be in the fourth round. Does a team take a flyer on him in the second round? I don't know. You really never know what's going to happen in the draft until you get there at the end of April.
100%. And that's what I'm saying. We're not here to speculate, but at the end of the day, it was the right decision, I think, because it was the right decision for him.
Yeah.
He's the one who made it. Everyone gave him the agency and the space to be able to think it through. He ultimately decided this was the right fit. I mean, to sum it up, I also just want to say on behalf of us, our station, the Syracuse fans, thanks to Kyle McCord for everything that he brought to this program. I mean, 10 wins aside, the records aside, he rejuvenated this fan base. I mean, he had people going absolutely berserk in a way that we have never seen in our admittedly limited few years covering the team. But still, we have asked around and fans who have been fans for decades told us the same thing, no?
Yeah, he made it such a special season up here. I mean, I think even beyond all of the Fran Brown it was a match made in heaven at exactly the right time. And I said this on social media for both him and Fran Brown, right? Because in a day and age where everything is dollar signs, college football is a business. It's all money, money, money. Now, don't get me wrong. Syracuse paid him money. Let's not glaze over that fact.
Syracuse gave him a bag.
Syracuse gave him some money. But in terms of the decision to transfer here from Ohio State, Fran Brown, obviously we know the whole story. Sat on his couch in Columbus, Ohio last December and convinced him to come to Syracuse in Brown's first year as a head coach. There was something so unique and so just beautiful about the Fran Brown-Kyle McCord relationship because it truly was so mutually beneficial. I mean, these are two guys, McCord and Brown, that have known each other since McCord was a kid in southeastern Pennsylvania, in the Philly area, in the Jersey area, when Fran Brown was around as a coach at Temple and Rutgers, and he knew McCord's parents. The whole thing just coming together was just so fitting. It was the perfect recipe, really at the perfect time. McCord obviously leaving Ohio State, looking for a place where he could really come into his own and be allowed to play with that freedom, and that we heard it so many times this year, that he felt like he was playing free and the best version of himself on the football field. And I think a large part of that is what Fran Brown allowed him to do and the faith that Fran Brown put in him.
I mean, yeah, I think it's even beyond the fact that it was the best version of him on the football field. I felt like if you asked him, he would tell you that he truly became a better man too. He was a great leader. He was that kind of person where if you know, you're a dad and your daughter comes home with Kyle McCord, you're feeling pretty amped up about that.
Right.
Like there was no drama. He completely exemplified Dart.
Yeah.
And that will be the standard in future years to come.
Right.
It means a lot to me that Fran Brown was looking for the kind of quarterback who was a true leader and a good person, and that Kyle McCord fit that standard and was that person. That, I truly believe, is a big part of the reason that they were successful together, because you look at some of the other programs that have the drama. We talked a little bit about Carson Beck because we kind of like to throw him under the rug a little bit. We just think he's bad news. But like, there are just some players like that who you wonder about, and you wonder, are the things they're doing off the field going to impact what happens on the field? Never a doubt with Kyle McCord on that front.
Yeah, Kyle McCord needed a fresh start coming out of Ohio State and Syracuse, and Fran Brown really gave it to him. I mean, how many times this year did Fran Brown refer to Kyle as having another coach on the field? You want to talk about things we'll never know? We'll never know what happened, what would have happened if Kyle McCord were to stay at Ohio State another year, but we know what happened when he came to Syracuse. And I think he would tell you, I mean, how many times in interviews has he said, quote, "It was the best decision of my life to come to Syracuse."
Of his life.
Of his life.
I mean, that should show you.
A lot of things have happened in his life.
I mean, he's been through a lot. Like, that should show, that should mean something to you if you're a Syracuse fan.
Truly.
Not just that he came, but how happy he felt after the fact, looking back, you know? And I get it. There are a lot of people, especially some of those people who are a little bit older or traditionalists, who feel like, you know, it's a different feeling when a player was here for 4 years versus 1 year. But if really all the Syracuse community had him for was 1 year, and this is what he was able to do in it, I'm not sure there's much else you could have asked for in a 1 year stint, man.
Right. And nothing in his statement that he put out on social media today after the announcement surprised me, because he's been saying these things in interviews and all year long. But I think it really stuck out. He said 1 year can truly change your life. He thanked Fran Brown for, again, changing his life. And he said, playing in the Dome will be some of my best memories. A lot of that is because of the fans. You welcomed me with open arms, and your unwavering love and support inspired us all season long. I'll forever bleed orange. He was shown love and support, and that allowed him to grow. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. And I know I keep saying it, but that's so rare in this day and age. Everything is about, where can I get the most money? Where can I be guaranteed a starting spot? Whatever, yada, yada. I think what him and Fran Brown had truly was unique. And I think we are going to look back on it in years to come. If this truly is the first year of the rebirth of Syracuse football, all that is left to, we don't know that yet in terms of the next decade or the next years of Fran Brown's tenure. But I think there's a really good chance that we're going to look back on this first year and give a lot of thanks to Kyle McCord.
I agree. And I think if we are sitting here a year from now, or 2 years from now, even 5 years from now, and we're having these similar conversations where we feel like the quarterback in Fran Brown or the team in Fran Brown had a special connection that went beyond money, that had to do with loyalty and trust, then we're going to really appreciate what Fran Brown brought as well, as part of that kind of duo and twosome. Beyond that, final thoughts.
Final thoughts, I mean, just kind of echoing what you said before. Thank you to Kyle for coming here and making it such a special year. You know, I think we had heard a lot about, at least I had heard when he committed here, kind of like his reputation at Ohio State, that he wasn't very candorous, that he wasn't always joking around in interviews and stuff like that. And I think to the whole broader point of this episode, he really blossomed at Syracuse into becoming a guy that was great to talk to, absolutely just a phenomenal leader and a phenomenal precedent set for this program moving forward. So we wish him all the best, and I know that, you know, a lot of Syracuse fans are in the boat now where they have a new favorite guy to root for on Sundays. We'll see where he ends up.
100%. So keep that in mind. We will continue to cover Kyle McCord for you.
Pro Day.
Yes.
Pro Day's coming up.
As he goes through this entire process and beyond. We love to root for our Orange, who are playing in the NFL and are playing pro in any sport. So definitely continue to watch this podcast. We'll continue that coverage. But listen, sports is a microcosm of life. He took a chance and it really paid off for him. It's a beautiful thing to see. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back again next week. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. You can find us on YouTube, social media, or wherever you get your podcasts. Have a nice night.